Do you consider yourself a religious man?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, how do you think Judgment Day will work for you with so much blood on your hands?
I'm not going to entertain that question.
Oh,
ma'am.
okay, of course not. Do you think you're going to hell, Mr. Lyons?
I'm not going to entertain.
Of course not. How many government...
The gentlelady will suspend. The gentlelady will suspend.
Chairman?
A gentlelady will suspend. As I said, the issues we're debating here are important to ones that members feel deeply about.
Thank you.
While vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum and debate. The witnesses are here voluntarily, and I will continue to remind members that while oversight is important, aggressively attacking those witnesses personally is inappropriate and not in keeping with the traditions of our committee.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking a question. You guys are always talking about religion here in the Bible. I mean, it's okay for me to ask a question, right? But let me continue on. I got your note.
All right, the gentlelady may...
Thank you so much. Let me get back to my question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I appreciate you. How many government agencies, Mr. Lyons, are you aware of that routinely kill American citizens and you still get funding?
Ma'am, I'm not going to entertain that.
Of course you're not. Exactly. Exactly. Once again, questions that you cannot answer. And that is exactly why, Mr. Chairman, and to this committee, to my colleagues, and to my colleagues across the aisle, this is exactly why we should not be funding this agency. The people are watching you. They are watching you. And this is why we need to abolish ICE. With that, I yield back. Thank you kindly.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Evans, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, for this important hearing. This past year has been historic for national security thanks to the joint work between the agencies present today and our Republican colleagues. The big, beautiful bill unlocked billions of dollars to finally secure the border and deliver much-needed support for law enforcement officials who keep us safe every day, slashing things like the scourge of overdose deaths that claimed approximately 400,000 lives under the previous administration. And this is despite increasing violence against federal officers, which has been inspired by fear-mongering from the Democrats. As a soldier for 12 years, as a cop for 10 years, and as the only Latino in Colorado's delegation, it's been my long-standing position that with a secure border, we must use all available resources to target the worst of the worst, violent offenders like murderers and rapists, and so-called non-violent like drug dealers and thieves and child porn producers. Get the gangsters, not the grandmas. Director Lyons, is ICE's priority the apprehension and removal of criminal non-citizens rather than the broader population of illegally present individuals?
Yes, sir. ICE's continued focus is on the criminal aliens that are in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Democrats in my state in Colorado champion soft on crime sanctuary policies at the state level and in cities like Denver, which borders my district. These policies not only impede federal investigations that target cartels, gangbangers, entities like Tren de Aragua, MS-13, the Sinaloa cartel, but they also endanger our communities by releasing dangerous criminals back into the streets who continue to traffic drugs, steal cars, intimidate families, and recruit children. In fact, fentanyl overdose rates in Denver are going up in 2025. It's common sense that when local or state police arrest an individual for a crime, those officers should be able to obtain basic information about the arrestee, and those state and local officers should then be allowed to share information with federal law enforcement to communicate threats, honor detainer requests, and work together to ensure national security and public safety. So, Director Lyons, can you please explain how ICE works around sanctuary policies to go after the worst of the worst? And do these sanctuary policies that release criminals back into the community increase or decrease ICE's presence in the community and the temperature of the interactions that ICE has with the community?
Sir, when we deal with sanctuary jurisdictions, we do have to have more law enforcement officers on the street. Like I said earlier in my testimony, we'd much rather have the chance to take a aggravated felon, repeat DUI offender into custody at a prison, local jail, or some type of lockup environment where it's safer for my officers and for not only the individual, but that community as well. And then given the opportunity to take that person into custody before that person can reoffend. Unfortunately, as a field office director, when I ran the Boston field office, we saw too many times that we placed a detainer on a sexual assault individual who just went out later after the detainer was dropped to rape again. And that is why we need cooperation at all levels, especially the local and state.
Thank you. Director Lyons, my district, 40% Hispanic. It's full of successful business owners and strong immigrant families. Unfortunately, my colleagues across the aisle are fanning the flames of fear for their own political gain in my Hispanic communities, scaring people over events that haven't happened in my district. So I'd like for you for just a brief moment to speak directly to my constituents who are legally present in the U.S., not criminals, but who are fearful of being searched or detained via immigration efforts. Should they fear ICE? And what policies does ICE have to prevent the seizure of people with legal status?
Sir, ICE officers and special agents are trained in the Immigration and Nationality Act. So anyone that is here legally or lawfully or a U.S. citizen should not be concerned about being deported or detained. Unfortunately, many times there are individuals that are with criminal illegal aliens. And sir, as you being a former law enforcement officer, you know, you arrive on a scene, you ID everyone in that case. If we're looking for an individual and someone is here present in the country legally, then we're going to take action. We're not going to turn a blind eye no more. But someone that's in the country lawfully should not feel scared to walk down the street, drive.
Thank you. Sorry, I got 23 seconds left. Have one thing that I want to ask. As a cop, if I had an arrest warrant, and there's a difference between arrest warrants and search warrants. If I had an arrest warrant for an individual and I thought they were in the house, or if I was assisting social services with a child removal, I still had to have an arrest warrant to go in the house. So I have many questions about the memo saying that you don't need a warrant to go into the house. Will you commit with me at a later date to discuss this?
100%, sir. I would look forward to sitting down and discussing that.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, Mr. Lyons, I wanted to just follow up on a statement that you just made, which is that if you're here legally and lawfully, you should not worry. I think the problem is there are many, many immigrants that are here legally and lawfully that are very worried because they have been snatched off the streets. They have had their face beat in by ICE agents. They've been yanked out of their car. They've been driven around and harassed. And so that is, I think, at the end of the day, the key nut of the crux here, which is that, unfortunately, there is not just this focus on criminals and that people who are here in legal status. And for example, I have an example of this that I'd like to highlight for you. And back in October, Maher Tarabishi, a North Texas resident who was allowed to be in this country legally, and was under a supervision order to check in on an annual basis since 2008, and did that because he had an adult disabled son. And so he was here working as an IT consultant and was here in legal process to take care of his adult legal son. He went to check into his appointment. It so happened to be at the time that the Dallas ICE office was closed due to the shooting. And so he was not able to check in. When he went back to check in, he was immediately snatched up and detained because he missed his appointment. That was unavoidable because the office was closed. He told everyone he was in legal status. He had been here since 2008. And he had an adult disabled son that would likely pass away if he was not released. He was not released. His son died. And then to complicate it, he was not allowed to go and attend the funeral. And he's still in detention in the Bluebonnet facility in Texas. He is not a criminal. He has no criminal history. He was here legally. That is an unacceptable outcome. And I would like to know if you are willing to review his case and help us get his release, because he should not be in the Bluebonnet detention facility under these facts.
Yes, ma'am. I'm committed to reviewing that case for you.
I appreciate that. The other issue that I am really very concerned about is these warrantless entries into people's homes. It is a problem that is of epic proportion. There was just recently, yesterday, circulation, a Latino family, ICE just broke into their home without a warrant. And there was an example where they arrested a man in his pajamas who had every right to be here as a U.S. citizen, but wrongfully snatched out in the freezing cold without a warrant to do so. The problem that we're having, nobody wants to see attacks on ICE agents, sir. But this is something I have brought up in this committee time and time again, which is, unfortunately, under your leadership and under Secretary Noem's leadership, this rogue brutality that ICE agents are inflicting upon the people of this country is not being reined in. It's not being, the agents who are abusing their power are not being held accountable. I'm sure that there are many, many fine agents who are doing everything they can to exercise their duty lawfully. But the problem is there are agents who are not. And the power that they have has gone to their head, and they use that power unconstitutionally in violation of many people's direct constitutional rights. And what you're seeing in this country is the fact that your agency, it's not stopping. And rather than saying, yes, we're going to take steps to keep these people who are abusing their power and who are terrorizing citizens of this country wrongfully, that we're going to hold them accountable, rather than that's what we want to see. You're doubling down on that we're only going after criminals, which is in your own comments. You said that you had 397, I think that's right, 379,000 arrests, but only 8,700 of them were suspected gang members or known suspected terrorists. That's 2%. And the problem is we can't terrorize 98% of the people in this country that have been wrongfully detained for 2%. That's not how the system works, and that is not okay. And so we have to do a better job. And so what procedures are you putting in place to hold agents accountable who clearly have a hot trigger and who clearly abuse their authority because someone has a phone and a whistle?
Ma'am, ICE does have the Office of Professional Responsibility. It's a robust internal investigation agency that does investigate allegations of special agent or deportation officer misconduct. And we do take everyone seriously, and we do investigate those.
Well, those are not being publicly reported. And so that's where there's a huge breach of the public trust, because there does not appear to be any accountability, sir. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. McKenzie, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all of our testifiers being here today. Before I begin, I would like to thank all of our members of law enforcement across the country who work every day to keep our communities safe, and also to their families that sacrifice. We know that it's a challenging job, and the environment is made particularly challenging by those who want to oppose our law enforcement from carrying out their lawful duties to keep everybody in our country and our community safe. As was discussed earlier, there are a couple areas, though, where I think it's appropriate to discuss potential reforms and the way that we can improve our government operations. DHS guidance indicates that ICE does not arrest or detain U.S. citizens. On the other hand, social media is full of reports and accusations that this is occurring. As you know, any accusation that an American citizen's rights are violated is very serious. Can you clarify, Mr. Lyons, whether this is something that it occurs, and what are the circumstances where a U.S. citizen might be detained, and what steps does ICE take to prevent mistakes?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. Well, unfortunately, there's a misnomer that ICE is just a civil enforcement agency, and that's completely wrong. ICE enforces over 400 criminal statutes as well. Special agents, especially with the Homeland Security investigations, they're consistently out there doing human trafficking cases, drug cases, terrorism cases, and we do encounter U.S. citizens, and those who do commit federal crimes are arrested. But under Title VIII, no U.S. citizen is subject to civil immigration enforcement, and that just doesn't happen. There are multiple safeguards in that way, and if a U.S. citizen is detained in the course of an immigration investigation, they're quickly released. We don't take action on American citizens.
If it does occur where a U.S. citizen is detained during the course of another investigation, how is that documented and conveyed to the public about the fact that this did occur and what the circumstances around that were?
So, sir, if you say it's a separate investigation, if it comes to a criminal case, obviously a lot of those are under seal or ongoing investigations. We won't expose that. But we're transparent in the case when it comes to any U.S. citizens that's detained in any law enforcement operations that's subsequently arrested.
I appreciate that. I think greater transparency could be beneficial for both the American public and everybody involved here if we clearly articulate what occurred in many of these instances. I've seen it myself when I'm looking into local issues in our community. There are oftentimes two sides to the story, and when it is actually conveyed what did occur and why it occurred, there's a greater understanding in our local community of the law enforcement activities that occurred. The second thing I would like to hit on is jurisdictions, which are sometimes referred to sanctuary cities. Not a clear definition, as we all know, but local authorities in our community. We have Northampton County, which does not honor ICE detainer requests for 48 hours and properly convey to ICE and law enforcement about the release of that individual, when that may occur, or even during that detainer period, allow ICE to come onto their property to make an arrest in a secure facility. Obviously, that leaves our community in a vulnerable position. In our case, members of Tren de Aragua, domestic abusers, have been released onto the street, and ICE had to stake out that location, making the arrests in an unsecure way out in the local community. From your perspective, how does this dynamic affect public safety and day-to-day operations, and where or how can we change and improve the coordination between ICE and state and local partners?
Thank you, sir. Again, and what I would say is just very basic communication would go a long way for public safety. You know, ICE respects and abides by state and municipality laws, where sometimes you can't hold for any reasons. But a simple phone call to let us know that that individual is going to be released, or if that individual is released, sharing that biographical data with us will go a long way. Because the last thing we want is a criminal illegal alien to go back into the community. And more often than not, they prey upon other migrants who are coming here for a better life, yet that they can hide in plain sight because these sanctuary jurisdictions won't just pick up a phone, notify ICE that they're being re-released.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we want full cooperation between our local law enforcement and federal agents when they are trying to do their job. If somebody is on a detainer, they should be allowed onto that property, given the ability within that detainer window to make a lawful arrest. I think it would go a long way to keeping our community safe. I would like to thank all of you again for being here. The fact that you are here and present for this kind of testimony, I think, brings greater accountability and increases the ability for us to make reforms in Congress. Thank you again.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our ranking member, Thompson. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for being here. Let me just be clear. Secretary Noem must step down or be impeached by the House, period. The lawlessness, the cruelty, the outright viciousness that she has created has destroyed an agency whose very mission is to protect our country. Under Noem's leadership, congressional oversight is ignored, detention visits are blocked, due process is ignored, and laws are broken without thought. This is the first time any of you have testified before our committee. It took 2 American citizens being murdered in cold blood to get you to show up. ICE raids schools, churches, and hospitals. And let's not forget 5-year-old Liam Ramos. You used him as a bait and then detained him despite his father legally seeking asylum. Liam is the face of your cruelty. My district is one of the most ethnically diverse in America. Our diversity is our strength, but somehow you all seem to believe it's a weakness. Last fall, the Supreme Court greenlit ICE's ability to yank people off the street based on one thing, such as, quote, the type of work one does, speaking Spanish or speaking with an accent, and their apparent race or ethnicity. Mr. Lyons, I speak Spanish. If I wasn't wearing my member pin, would me being a Latina or speaking Spanish be enough for ICE agents to harass me or shove me into one of your unmarked cars?
No, ma'am.
I speak for all of us when I say that I think we know the real answer to this. These are the realities traumatizing my constituents. We know that ICE is transferring New Jersey detainees to other states like Texas, ripping them from their families and leaving them unable to challenge their detention. Mr. ICE, yes or no? I'm sorry, Mr. Lyons. Yes or no?
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Will you provide us with a list of people ICE has transferred from New Jersey to other states so that I can inform their families where they are?
Yes, ma'am.
These are people like my constituent, Lee Cordilla, whose ICE shipped to Texas and continues to detain despite 2 judicial orders compelling her release. Over the weekend, Lee Cow was hospitalized for 72 hours while her family had no idea where she was at, nor the status of her condition. Mr. Lyons, would you be willing to look into this to make sure to release my constituent? Why have we failed? Why have you failed to inform her family where she was sent and the status of her condition? When will she be freed?
Yes, ma'am, you have my commitment that I'll look into that.
Thank you. Now soon, Mr. Lyons and all of you, my district will host the World Cup matches and hundreds of thousands of visitors will come. Visitors' confidence is plummeting and jeopardizing the World Cup. Mr. Lyon, will you commit to ensure that pausing its operations and raise at FIFA matches and other FIFA-sanctioned public events?
Ma'am, ICE, specifically Homeland Security Investigations, is a key part of the overall security apparatus for the World Cup. We're dedicated to securing that operation, and we're dedicated to the security of all our participants as well as visitors.
You realize that if they feel that they're going to be wrongfully incarcerated or wrongfully pulled out, that's going to hurt this entire process. I hope you realize that.
Yes, ma'am, and ICE is dedicated to ensuring that everyone that visits their facilities will have a safe and secure event.
Without these assurances, our local communities and national reputations will indeed be suffered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Using the trope, diversity is our strength as an excuse for lawlessness is unbelievably naive and dangerous. Nobody in this room would say that diversity is a bad thing. Lawlessness is a bad thing. Law and order is much more of our strength than open border policies that welcomes anybody with no vetting. And when you get down to the nuts and bolts of this issue, we would not be having this hearing if the Democrats attacked illegal immigration with the same vigor that they're attacking law enforcement and the men at this table. That's a fact. And it's worth noting that the dishonesty in framing these issues has been unbelievably obvious. It's been consistent. And just as an anecdote, Mr. Lyons, was Liam used as bait by your agency?
No, sir. Actually, law enforcement officers took care of the child after the father abandoned him at a...
Walk us through what that means.
So, sir, the individual that was driving that vehicle with Liam was in fled from the scene from the officers. He was obviously upset. We comforted him. The officers actually placed him in one of our vehicles, played his favorite song, favorite music. Then they took him to McDonald's.
You all got him McDonald's. So you all did not abduct him. You did not use him as bait. Any characterization of that is a lie. And it has been repeated over and over by the Democrats to frame your agency. You know, it's worth noting again that the Democrats fought to prevent any vetting of 20 million illegal immigrants into this country over the last 4 years. They attack agents rather than those who are assaulting agents today. They continually misframe what's happening in the ground. They continually malign the law enforcement officers who are providing legal structure to otherwise lawless landscapes in this country. And it's worth noting that there have been roughly 2 million people in the country who have been removed in the last year, some voluntarily, and then some by forced deportations. We've heard roughly about 25 cases of alleged abuse. Some of them, as I just pointed out, are dishonestly framed. But let's do a favor to the Democratic side. Let's increase that number by 1,000 times. 25,000 cases of alleged abuse or improper protocols. We are still operating at roughly 99% proficiency. Given the scale of the problem, the scale of the solution that you all are operating under, your agents are doing a remarkable job, and I thank you. But one issue that I want to talk about is this idea of sanctuary policies. Sanctuary policies is not just a passive relinquishing effort. It's an active obstruction. Isn't that true, Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir.
And what I mean by that is when I say it's an active, to be specific, there are sanctuary states and cities that will release violent criminals rather than handing them over to pursuing federal law enforcement. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, sir.
I left the hearing a few moments ago just to find a quick example. Here's one right behind me. Just 30 hours ago, an illegal alien arrested for stabbing an American in the back. He was charged with attempted murder. He pled to a lesser offense. The feds wanted him, sought a detainer, and then rather than hold him for your agent's pickup, he was released back into the streets of Maryland. That is not an unusual action from local hostile law enforcement, is it, Mr. Lyons?
No, sir, that's what we face every day.
So we've heard the Democrats complain that we're not getting the worst of the worst, but their sanctuary jurisdictions that control roughly 40% of this country's population will actively release sex predators, drug dealers, violent offenders, rather than hand them over to you for deportation. And these are people who are already in custody. Am I correct, Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir. The individuals are already deemed a public safety threat by local or state law enforcement.
And then when they get a federal detainer, they will release them on the street rather than turn them over for deportation.
Yes, sir.
It's disgusting. Mr. Scott, I want to talk to you briefly. I'm running out of time. How many cities does your agency operate in?
We operate nationwide.
Why is it that there is so much tension in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now?
Because paid agitators are actively trying to stop law enforcement action. Without that, you wouldn't even have any idea most of these arrests were taking place.
In many parts of the country, local law enforcement assists your efforts to bring legal structure to these lawless areas. And isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And when order is maintained, you can do your job peacefully, correct?
Correct. And all we've ever asked is for law enforcement to do their job, not necessarily.
In Minneapolis, St. Paul, local law enforcement in some cases have been prohibited from maintaining order so you can do your job. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Gentleman's time is
I yield back.
expired.
Thank you.
I now recognize a gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Walkinshaw, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Lyons. Trump's mass deportation policies that the experts say harms children. Child detention. In this administration, under your watch, ICE has booked nearly 4,000 children. And 1,000 of them have been held longer than the court-ordered 20-day limit. Recently, ProPublica obtained handwritten letters and drawings from children detained by ICE. These are letters from children describing what it feels like and what it does to them when the government locks them up. This is Ariana. She's 14 years old, detained for 45 days. Since I got to this center, all I feel is sadness and mostly depression. This is Mia, 7 years old. I don't want to be in this place. I want to go to my school. This is Scarlett, 17 years old. I feel very bored and overwhelmed because I am locked up. This is Gabby, 14 years old. I feel so much sadness and depression of not being able to leave. This is Maria, 9 years old. Me and Dilly am not happy. Please get me out of here. This is a 12-year-old going to the doctor, and the only thing they tell me is drink more water. The water here is what makes people sick. And this one got me, Mr. Lyons, because this is a 5-year-old, Luis Annie. My son's 5. He can't write many words, but he can communicate through drawings like this. This is a picture of Luis Annie's family. And you might be able to see that none of the faces are smiling. Child detention is not required by law. You know that. It's not the only option available, and it's not effective. We know that community-based alternatives can ensure compliance with proceedings without traumatizing these children. Yet, you continue to detain and hold children for weeks or months, depriving them of school, stability, leaving them afraid, sick, and confused. And one of the key reasons for your mass detention, including the detention of Liam and his father, is to pressure people to give up their legal opportunities and pathways to remaining in the United States. Liam's father was following the rules, following the legal process with a valid claim. Let me be clear. No child, not Liam Ramos, not Gabby, or any of these children should be used as pawns in Stephen Miller's sick and twisted Great Replacement agenda. Mr. Lyons, in 2025, the British Journal of Psychiatry analyzed all of the data on the impact of immigration detention on children's health. Have you read that study and analysis?
No, sir, I haven't.
You're the director of you are not familiar with that literature.
No, sir.
You could tell me, I'm sure, chapter and verse on the tactics and the equipment that your agents use, military-style equipment across the country in American cities, but you don't know anything about the literature of the impacts of your policies on children. You haven't read it.
No, sir.
The Flores Agreement, I'm sure you know that, sets a 20-day limit on detaining children. You and the Trump administration are trying to terminate that agreement. How long would you like to hold children? 20 days, 40 days, 60 days, 100 days? What's the right number, Mr. Lyons?
So we wouldn't like to hold any children. We would like to remove that family unit together safely and humanely and as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Since you haven't read the literature, let me tell you what it says. Detention harms children. No period. No period. Not 20, 40, 75 days that you're holding children can be deemed safe. All detention of children has adverse impacts and is profoundly detrimental. Your policies are profoundly detrimental to children. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Fong, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for those who are here testifying. I want to thank you to you and your teams and your personnel for what you do. Commissioner Scott, you mentioned in your testimony, national security cannot exist without effective border security. Couldn't agree more. Everyone on your teams are doing tremendous work under difficult conditions, and I want to thank you all. I do want to ask and dive in a little deeper as a Californian on the dangers and the consequences of these sanctuary policies. Director Lyons, I was in the state legislature in 2017 when sanctuary state policies were put in California. I opposed SB 54 because at the time, and everything has proven to be true, it was outlined that the impact on ICE and Border Patrol agents was that there would be reduced information and access. Agents would be conducting higher risk enforcement operations, and that there will be operational constraints when it comes to limiting cooperation between state and local law enforcement. I wanted to get your perspective, Director Lyons, and I'll go to you, Commissioner Scott, as well. Can you give specifics on how these sanctuary state policies impact your operations in real time compared to non-sanctuary operations?
Well, sir, for ICE, what I would I'll refer back to what we talked about earlier in my testimony, the fact that when state or local or county agencies don't cooperate with immigration customs enforcement, it forces us to go back out to the community, which we don't want to do. It also increases the number of assets we have to put towards that arrest. Like I said earlier, I would much rather send 1 or 2 agents or officers to make that arrest in a safe, secure location. rather than being out in the street. It's safer for everyone involved.
And before I go to you, Commissioner Scott, and answer, I just want to let everyone know, in California, and I think it was just reported a couple of days ago, there were currently 33,179 illegal aliens in the custody of California jurisdictions with active detainers. The crimes of these aliens include 399 homicides, 3,313 assaults, 3,171 burglaries, 1,011 robberies, 8,380 dangerous drug offenses, 1,984 weapon offenses, and 1,293 sexual predatory offenses. These are the real world consequences, isn't that right, Commissioner Scott? When we don't have cooperation, they're released into the community?
Those are exactly the consequences. And I would just add, California specific, they went above and beyond everybody else. I mean, in a negative way. They prohibited state and locals when they saw a crime taking place in front of them from sharing that information with us. San Diego, for example, right after that law was passed, a highway patrol pulled over a U-Haul van, and it was a smuggling event, probably a human trafficking event. A Border Patrol agent just happened to roll up on it and found out, luckily, but that highway patrol was disciplined and actually investigated internally, and that sent a chilling effect across the entire state of California, that not only can you not actively help us, you couldn't even pass information to us in a normal course of duties. Border security law enforcement's a team sport. We need to be working together, not against each other.
Now, can you explain what would have happened, and I think you alluded to it, but what would have happened prior to that? If there was local and state coordination with federal law enforcement?
On a daily basis, especially along the southwest border, and let's not forget, and the coast, because we have boats coming in. When a state or local agency would see illegal activity that they could take action on, and then they saw a federal crime, they would contact us. It happened all the time, and that completely ceased to exist when SB 54 was passed.
And these crimes, of course, as you mentioned before, if you go into specifics, I mean, this is trafficking, both humans and drugs. This is rape, assaults. I mean, anything, you're telling me that if any of those crimes occurred, if right now in California, if someone witnessed it, if a state law enforcement or local law enforcement witnessed these crimes being committed, they could not notify you?
They have some felony exceptions, but in most cases, you don't know until you start asking questions if it's just a smuggling event or a human trafficking event. Until you actually pop the trunk of the vehicle or the back of the car, you don't know what commodity is back there, if it's people or something else. It put a chilling effect beyond the actual written language on any kind of cooperation in the state.
Well, I want to thank you for that. Yes, there were some exceptions when it comes to felonies, but someone who lives in California and was there for the discussion and debate, everything we warned about when it came to sanctuary state policies and the consequences to our community and the consequences to public safety, they have come true. And that is sad and unfortunate, and we need to undo those policies. So I want to thank you all for your leadership and testimony and your work. Thank you, and Mr. Chairman, now you back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes of questions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And to our witnesses, thank you for being here. What we've heard today and seen play out in the streets of this nation for the past year, straight out of the Trump administration's fascist playbook: cheat, murder, lie about it, practice the art of mass distraction. The American people are not happy about this. This administration's officials are sitting before us. 2 people are dead. I understand that there's an investigation and you cannot go into the details about that. But there certainly appears to be no shame on the part of these officials who've undoubtedly watched some of your officers conduct themselves in ways that I know you don't condone. Not as law-abiding people, right? So I got to give you the benefit of the doubt. And I can't understand why you show no shame, no contrition, no remorse for the human lives that have been lost, or for the trampling of the Constitution and the tearing apart of the moral fiber of our nation. They think, apparently, you think, apparently, you've been coached, apparently, you've been called out of the room with a forced break to be told to be more aggressive, to push back against questions. The American people saw that happen. The American people watched as you all looked at each other. Oh, I didn't ask for a break. And clearly you were called in the back to be coached. A halftime locker room pep talk. This isn't a game. These are people's lives. We should all be, you should be, your officers should be held accountable that no one is above the law. No one can evade the Constitution. No person can evade what is right, even though you think that Donald Trump will protect you, and maybe he will for now. But there will be a time that you have to answer these questions. And while you have worked on many administrations, and it's been asked, you worked on different administrations, what's different? I'll tell you what's different. The approach of how you conduct it, your search and seizure. The reason there were so many others and they were not riots was because people were not being trampled. You had trained officers who knew the art of de-escalation. They understood the rule of law. They understood the Constitution. Yet now we continue to hear lies. Last year, I took members of Congress on an oversight visit to ICE facility. We were told certain things that turned out to be patent lies. They told us things that we witnessed within moments of being there to not be true, yet we continue to hear you and some of my colleagues suggest, don't believe your eyes, don't believe your ears, just trust us. Well, the American people can see. And this notion that Democrats don't want enforcement, those are talking points that are wrong. We want rapists and murderers off the street. We want the bad, the worst of the worst, to be arrested and to be deported if they aren't supposed to be here. What we don't want is citizens running down the street being chased by ICE agents, people being shot on the streets by rogue officers who are in fact American citizens. What we don't want is to see people like Ms. Good or Mr. Preti simply doing what we often say, if you see something, say something. We don't want to see people dying on the streets. So let me ask you a quick question. Mr. Lyons, has ICE ever detained an American citizen such as they are not free to leave, whether it is on the sidewalk, the street, or thrown into the back of an ICE vehicle because they looked or sounded a certain way, even though they said they were American citizens? Yes or no, quickly, I only get 38 seconds.
No, sir.
That's never happened before.
That we've arrested one? No, sir. We've detained individuals to verify identity, but we haven't arrested or deported. No, sir.
Detain, arrest, check it out. It's
yes, sir.
The same thing. Right. All right. What does an undocumented person look like or sound like? Does it look like Mr. Garbarino? Does it look like me?
Could look like anyone, sir.
Okay, well, how are you training your people? Because you've said and others have said, if they sound a certain way, they look a certain way, we're going to stop them. That was quoted by your people. What do you say to that?
Sir, what I say is that ICE does criminal targeted enforcement based on intelligence, and we don't use the color of skin or accents for that.
So the person who said that was wrong? Yes?
We'll let the gentleman get that answer in writing. His time has expired. We will now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Van Epps, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing and to our witnesses for testifying today. I want to commend the job the Trump administration and you gentlemen are doing to secure the border, enforce federal immigration laws, and keep dangerous criminals off our streets. Under President Biden, we saw unprecedented levels of illegal immigration, and many of those who came across the border were connected to
Hang in there. Are you working today? TRT? No, yes. Are you working? Yes. TRT? Good. Get paid. I need more from you. You'll get more of them. Okay, they say he's armed. Is that a gun? They said he's armed. And she says, she's doing He's got a flashlight in his mouth. What is he trying to do with
I guess he forgot that in his backpack.
for a year. Estaba al lado mío, después ya ven aunque no hay nada interesante de Dañaco, pero eso es normal. So the next time. Mañana la bolsa. Parece que 5 minutos de prensa.
Pero va a ser igual el arrival.
Yes. But it's quite good in
Thanks, Bonnie.
Of course. The first time he came against Max and Paul, playing military family man, so everyone was on steady. No, perdón. On the other hand, Just signed with Michigan. We got offers from every D1 school. 17-year-old kid. Gallerini said he walked past him. That's his father. That's whose kid that is. But then he turned around. See, he saw him last year. There's a little one. He's going to be an edge rusher. You're going to be hearing about his on Saturday afternoon in the next few weeks. Carter Meadows. Yeah.
I'll wait and see what those look like.
Oh, yeah. No quiero hacer nada más, pero eso es muy lindo para que hagan como más
The guy that
So I heard. Anything good? In theory.
General maybe that's like Trump businessman doing that here as well. Maybe that paradox works. And also General Pride. Let's go back to
We record, we decide.
Pizza control. Yeah, it's a false between those two. I said even like last month. Then the later, right, and then other moments when you want to come? But that's probably
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I apologize for the delay. I was once again with the president. He and I were both reviewing the newly released surveillance footage from FBI in the Savannah Guthrie case on just this heartbreaking situation with respect to her mother. The president encourages any American across the country with any knowledge of the suspect to please call the FBI, who continue to assist state and local authorities who are leading this investigation on the ground. And once again, I will reiterate that the prayers of this entire White House are with Savannah and her family at this time, and we hope this person is found soon and that her mother is brought home safely. President Trump has a very busy week ahead, so I will begin with some scheduling announcements today. Tomorrow here at the White House, the president will host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for a bilateral meeting. The remainder of the week will be focused on energy and deregulation. Tomorrow afternoon, the president will hold an event in the East Room to tout clean, beautiful coal as America's most reliable and affordable energy source, especially during periods of peak demand, just as we saw during this most recent winter storm, which impacted hundreds of millions of Americans. The president will discuss how clean, beautiful coal is not only keeping the lights on in our country, but also driving down the cost of electricity across the country as well. Additionally, on Thursday, President Trump will be joined by Administrator Lee Zeldin to formalize the rescission of the 2009 Obama-era endangerment finding. This will be the largest deregulatory action in American history, and it will save the American people $1.3 trillion in crushing regulations. The bulk of the savings will stem from reduced costs for new vehicles, with the EPA projecting average per vehicle savings of more than $2,400 for popular light-duty cars, SUVs, and trucks. This is just one more way this administration is working to make life more affordable for everyday Americans. Overall, these groundbreaking actions from President Trump will drive larger economic growth, create thousands of good-paying jobs, expand manufacturing, increase consumer choice, and improve affordability for millions of families and businesses. Finally, on Friday, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will travel to Fort Bragg in the great state of North Carolina to meet with military families and the heroic members of our special forces who carried out the successful Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela and helped bring narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro to justice. I know the President and First Lady are both greatly looking forward to this visit. Also, the First Lady will celebrate Valentine's Day at the Children's Inn at the National Institute of Health tomorrow, with children, families, and NIH staff involved in clinical trials. In other news this week, thanks to President Trump signing the largest middle-class tax cut in history, this is shaping up to be the biggest tax refund season ever, and we are in it now. President Trump and Republicans fundamentally believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned money, not less, which is why he fought so hard to deliver this long overdue relief. From no tax on tips, overtime, or Social Security, to auto loan interest deductions on new American-made vehicles, plus increases to the standard deduction and child tax credit, more money is flowing back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. We're already hearing from everyday Americans across the country who are reporting substantial tax savings thanks to the Working Families Tax Cut, which every single Democrat in Congress voted against. AMAC, which represents millions of Americans, has heard directly from more than their 1,000 members already about how the Trump tax cuts are easing cost of living concerns. I wanted to share a few of those powerful responses with you today. This one comes from Dean and Wendy in Wisconsin, who says, quote, "Instead of paying out $3,700 last year, we got back $2,500 in refunds this year. This is huge for our family." Steve from California said, quote, "The new senior citizen deduction is a tremendous relief and has given us peace of mind and the freedom to truly enjoy the retirement years we worked so hard for." Eric from Nevada said, "As a senior, no tax on Social Security helps me tremendously. The no tax on tips helps my daughter-in-law as a waitress. The no tax on overtime helps my son, who works constantly. Our family savings from the One Big Beautiful Bill could total even more than $5,000. We love the Trump tax cuts." These are just a few positive examples of the everyday Americans that President Trump's tax cuts are uplifting. We'd love to hear more from the American people across the country who are benefiting from the working families tax cuts. The White House is also pleased to share that parents across the country can now officially apply to open a Trump account for their child. In order to apply, parents can visit trumpaccounts.gov and fill out the IRS form 4547. These Trump accounts are special investment accounts aimed at providing American children with a jump start on building wealth for life. They have all the tax advantages as a traditional IRA account, but are specifically tailored to build wealth the moment a child is born. Thanks to President Trump, every child born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028 is eligible to receive $1,000 from the U.S. Treasury to fund their account. Parents, guardians, and even nonprofits can then contribute up to $5,000 per year. Employers can also contribute up to $2,500 per year per employee. President Trump believes there is no better investment than investing in our nation's children. If you are a parent who maximizes contributions to your child's Trump account, its projected value could reach nearly $1.1 million by the time your child turns 28 years old, based on average historical stock market returns. Safe to say the Trump accounts will give a substantial head start to position the next generation for a brighter future. And with the stock market exploding under President Trump's pro-growth policies, there has never been a better time to sign up for an investment account like this. The Dow Jones just shattered 50,000 for the first time ever on Friday, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ continue smashing record after record. So with President Trump in charge, Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming once again, and these new Trump accounts for America's kids will boom too. So with that, once again, every parent should go to trumpaccounts.gov today, and I'm going to put it on my own personal to-do list to sign up for one as well. With that, I will take your questions. Karoline Downey from the National Review is here. Thank you for being here, and why don't you kick us off?
Thank you for having me. On the criticism that immigration enforcement has become arbitrary or not particularly prioritizing, Democrats have been circulating the statistic that only 14% of illegal aliens arrested under this administration are violent criminals, but we know that in deep blue cities with progressive district attorneys, it's common to plead down serious violent crimes into less serious offenses, which could be distorting those numbers. So given that backdrop, does the administration still stand by the messaging that you're targeting the worst of the worst, and does this prevailing narrative tell the whole story?
Well, thank you for bringing this up, Karoline. I've seen this CBS report floating around. There's a lot of liberal talking heads and pundits and Democrat elected politicians who think that this single story and these statistics and the way they are painted is somehow a shot at this administration. It is not. And let me correct the record. Number one, the Trump administration has been clear from day one that any illegal alien present in this country is subject to deportation. However, the priority, of course, is going after the convicted criminals, the worst of the worst, the murderers, the pedophiles, the rapists in this country. Interestingly, in the CBS story, what the Democrat talking heads on television are not saying is this line. Nearly 60% of ICE arrestees over the past year had criminal charges or convictions. And among that population, the majority of the criminal charges or convictions are for nonviolent crimes. Oh, well, what are nonviolent crimes, you ask? This has coincided with what DHS has been saying all along, that approximately 70% of illegal aliens arrested under President Trump have pending criminal charges and or prior convictions. And these so-called nonviolent crimes, drug trafficking, distribution of child porn, burglary, fraud, DUI, embezzlement, solicitation of a minor, and human smuggling, just to name a few. So just because a crime is not violent in nature doesn't mean that crime is victimless. And I can guarantee every single person who is out there on television right now pointing to these statistics that were taken out of context by CBS News would not want an illegal alien convicted of the distribution of child porn or fraud or DUI living in your community. So the Trump administration will continue our focus on deporting all illegal aliens present in our country with a focus on the worst of the worst criminals. Thank you for being here. Gabe.
Karoline, thank you. And thank you for the update on our colleague Savannah Guthrie's mother. Is there anything more you can share? You said the president was reviewing that surveillance footage. What was his initial reaction when seeing those disturbing images? And does he believe that that suspect acted alone?
I haven't talked to him specifically about the second point on whether the suspect acted alone or not, so I don't want to weigh in on the president's thinking on that. His initial reaction, of course, as all Americans, is just pure disgust. And again, it's heartbreaking to see now this footage really bring to life a story we've all been reading about. And again, we're just praying for the safety of Nancy Guthrie and that she will return home soon. And the president directed me to please encourage all Americans with any information to call the FBI, and we hope that this case will come to a positive resolution as soon as possible.
We, of course, have a lot to talk about in a completely separate topic. I was hoping you can clarify something that's come up over the last several days, again, regarding a separate topic, Epstein files. According to newly released files, the president had a conversation with the Palm Beach police chief in the early 2000s, according to the police chief in 2019. The president has gone on record before, and he's told reporters that he said that that he had no idea about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. During this conversation with the police chief, however, he did say, according to this recounting of it, that thank goodness you're stopping him. He also called Karoline Maxwell evil. My two questions are, did that conversation with the Palm Beach police chief happen? And can you explain the discrepancy?
What I will say is that the president has always remained consistent and that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club at Mar-a-Lago because, frankly, Jeffrey Epstein was a creep. And unlike many other people who are named in these files, President Trump cut off his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and was honest and transparent about that for years and years. And so I think what the president has said all along has always remained true. And the release of more than 3 million documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous, disgusting crimes just shows the level of transparency that this president and administration has committed to and bringing these files to light.
But did he call the chief in 2006? Caroline, did he call the chief?
Look, it was a phone call that may or may not have happened in 2006. I don't know the answer to that question. What I'm telling you is that what President Trump has always said is that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club because Jeffrey Epstein was a creep, and that remains true. And this call, if it did happen, corroborates exactly what President Trump has said from the beginning. And I'm sure many of you, when you read that alleged FBI report, probably thought to yourself, wow, this really cracks our narrative that we've been trying to push about this president for many years. So we're moving on from that. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to ask you about the SAVE Act. NBC reported that there's some hesitation among House Republicans on adding absentee ballot restrictions into the SAVE Act. Can you explain what the hesitation is among House Republicans and also just provide a status of negotiations with Congress on the legislation?
Sure. I can't speak for House Republicans, Reagan. I can obviously speak for the president, who is quite possibly the strongest supporter of the Save America Act, which, as you know, would require proof of citizenship to register to vote. It would require proof of identification, a photo identification before casting a ballot. And it would also ensure that there are exceptions made. I think that's what you're alluding to with these conversations with House Republicans for reasonable requests, of course, for our military, for individuals who are disabled and cannot make it to the polls. Those are reasonable, common sense things that I believe House Republicans are discussing amongst themselves. But as for the president, he's been very clear. He wants House Republicans and Democrats, too, if they were politically wise, to pass this legislation, for the Senate to pass it, to send it to the president's desk so it can be signed into law.
Follow-up. I'm wondering when the last time the president spoke to Leader Thune was and if he discussed using the standing filibuster to pass legislation.
The president has given his position on the standing filibuster. As for his most recent conversation with Leader Thune, frankly, I'm not sure. I do know they speak very frequently. The president's in constant communication with both Leader Thune and the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. Stephen, I see we switched up our seating chart. Your direct line of sight now. Congratulations.
Thank you to the Correspondents Association for recognizing the New York Post's reach. I've got two questions for you, one about the Guthrie case and then another about infrastructure. On the Guthrie case, does President Trump have a warning to the culprits here about what would happen to them, what federal consequences they would face if they do not release Nancy Guthrie unharmed?
I think anyone who was involved in this depraved crime, this abduction, of course, we want to be seen held to the fullest extent of the law possible.
And on infrastructure, can you explain why President Trump asked Chuck Schumer to help him rename Penn Station and Dulles Airport after himself? Why is he interested in having his name on those two buildings? And why are the Gateway Tunnel funds the proper point of pressure to get that to happen?
To your first question about the renaming, why not? It was something the president floated in his conversation with Chuck Schumer. As for the funding, the president has addressed that separately himself. Danny.
Thanks. Today, the vice president's account posted and then deleted a tweet about the Armenian genocide. And then last week, President Trump's Truth Social account posted and then deleted a racist video about the Obamas. And the White House again blamed that on a staffer. I wanted to ask you, does the White House have a social media problem at the moment? Do you have an auto-posting problem that's leading to these mistakes?
No. As for the Armenian tweet that you're referring to, I would just refer you back to the White House's message that was issued on Armenian Remembrance Day, and there's been no change of policy at this time. Mary?
Thanks, Caroline. When the president goes to Beijing in the spring, does he have plans to try and advocate on behalf of Jimmy Lai, who was just sentenced to 20 years yesterday?
This is something I've heard the president advocate for both publicly and privately. I had the honor of being in that meeting with President Trump and President Xi in South Korea that took place, and this was brought up by the president himself. It is important to him, and he looks forward to visiting China in April. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. So some Republican lawmakers from Nebraska have said they're worried that the Argentinian beef executive order will sideline some American ranchers. How will the Trump administration make sure prices go down for consumers without harming those ranchers?
Of course. Well, both things can happen at the same time. That's the president's belief. He wants to see prices come down. In fact, I just overheard him on the phone with Secretary Rollins. They were talking about something different, but he's always saying we got to make sure that prices continue to come down. As you know, Secretary Rollins successfully did that with respect to egg prices. Beef prices are coming down slightly, and the president wants to see that continue. He believes that a minor import to the country with cattle might be a short-term solution with respect to bringing down prices. But of course, protecting our American cattle and rancher industry is a priority for the president, and he's in touch with those stakeholders. We've had them here at the White House a few times in recent months to discuss this issue directly. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Yesterday, the president on social media threatened to block the new Gordie Howe Bridge, which would connect Detroit to Canada. This is a bridge that was fully paid for by Canada. It used American labor to construct it. It used American steel to construct that bridge. The president in 2017 was actually in favor of this bridge, part of a joint statement that he put out when he met with the Canadian Prime Minister. Why has the president changed his mind as it relates to this bridge?
I think the president was very clear and direct in his truth, John, but just to reiterate, the fact that Canada will control what crosses the Gordie Howe Bridge and owns the land on both sides is unacceptable to the president. It's also unacceptable that more of this bridge isn't being built with more American-made materials, even more so than what President Barack Obama committed to with the Canadians at the time, at the start of the project. He also believes that the U.S. should own at least half of the bridge, have shared authority over what passes across it, and participate in the economic benefits generated by its use. This is just another example of President Trump putting America's interests first, and so he made that very clear in his call with Prime Minister Carney earlier today. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just posted a photo of herself signing the last contract for Steel to build a border between Laredo, Del Rio, and Big Bend, Texas, among reports that construction had stalled. Is the president satisfied with the pace of construction?
The president wants to make sure that the full border wall is built as quickly as possible, of course. I know this is a priority for him dating back to 2016, and so absolutely he wants to ensure that the border wall is built under budget and ahead of schedule is how President Trump likes to view building projects, and that includes the border wall.
The pace of construction thus far?
I think the president is never satisfied. He always wants to ensure that things are moving along as quickly as possible, but I know Secretary Noem is on it, and she's doing a great job. Thank you, Caroline. You're welcome. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Charlie.
On the Nancy Guthrie case, is the president satisfied with the federal and local investigations so far? And has there been any more contact from the White House or the president with the family?
I don't think anybody will be satisfied until this case is brought to a close and until Nancy Guthrie is returned home safely with her loved ones.
Contacts? Has the president contacted the family since?
Not since that initial phone call. Sure. Tamara.
The National Governors Association is removing a meeting with President Trump from his agenda because only Republicans were invited. Is the White House reconsidering inviting Democrats, or do you think Republicans are still going to show up? Like, where does that stand now?
No, look, I just spoke with the president about this. It is a dinner at the White House. It's the people's house. It's also the president's home. And so he can invite whomever he wants to dinners and events here at the White House. I believe Governor Moore was invited last year and he did not show up to the dinner last year. Nobody reported on it. But again, the president has the discretion to invite whomever he wants to the White House, and he welcomes all those who received an invitation to come. And if they don't want to, that's their loss.
Maxwell, is the president going to rule out a pardon for her in her testimony, deposition yesterday? Her legal team seems to be making a case again for a pardon from the president.
Again, this is not something I've discussed with the president recently because, frankly, it's not a priority. He's focused on many of the issues that the American people are dealing with and providing solutions to those issues. So I haven't spoken with him recently. Last time we did speak about it, he said it's not something he's considering or thinking about. Go ahead, Bloomberg.
Thanks, Caroline. Secretary Litnick today was testifying on the Hill, and he said that he had visited Epstein's Island in 2012 with his wife and children, and that's after he said that he had cut ties with Epstein. And Justice Department documents show that he was in contact with Epstein through 2018 over messages. So does the White House stand behind Secretary Litnick right now, or given what he has said today, has there been any shift in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick's performance?
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary. I will just point out that there are a lot of wins in the news this week that people in this room have not asked about because you continue to ask questions about the same subject, so let me point them out for you. Again, on Friday, the Dow shattered 50,000 for the first time ever. This week, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons came out in opposition to gender mutilation surgeries for children. They are the first major medical group to do so. A federal appeals court today, nobody asked about that, just upheld the Trump administration's policy of detaining illegal aliens, validating the strong measures that have driven illegal crossings to historic lows, and sent a crystal clear message that under President Trump, if you enter the country illegally, you will be detained and removed. The murder rate, again, not a single question about this, has plunged to a 125-year low as crime falls across the board, thanks to President Trump's crime crackdown. We also saw this week national median rents have fallen to a 4-year low following 6 consecutive monthly declines, and mortgage affordability has surged to a 4-year high. Home ownership is the core foundation principle of the American dream, and I will repeat that mortgage affordability this week surged to a 4-year high, but not a single of mention of that in this briefing room today. And again, this came out last Friday, but for an unprecedented 9th straight month, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. So we're going to get back to business. The president is very busy today, and you will see him all tomorrow at the event in the East Room touting his administration's energy policy. Thank you.